I'm mixing up some cerulean blue because I'm going to make my own fantasy watercolor map. This is an 11 by 15 hand-torn 140-pound watercolor regular piece of paper, and I'm laying in some cerulean blue for the base of my oceans of this fantasy game map. I lead campaigns with friends all the time, and I just like to make my own maps and places. Sometimes they're real, sometimes they're just out of my head. This one I just made up on the spot. We're going to try a couple of different greens. I'm going to do the ocean the way that I know how. And here I am laying in some yellow. I use a couple different yellows as well, just to give it the terrain some variation. You can make one of these at home too. All you need are the right materials. You want to go for the higher end materials rather than the craft store stuff. So I like Arches paper, I like freezer tape. I'm very particular about my tape because I don't want my paper to rip. I go for higher end pigments, so Daniel Smith is my current favorite. And you can also do this in gouache too, if that's your preferred medium. I like watercolor because all of these maps have a bit of a glow to them. And I do use gouache at one point when I do the sand. We're not there yet. We're just laying in all the yellows and now the darker blues for the ocean. I'm going to list all my materials in the more information section below this video because it can be quite an exhaustive list and it's easy to get lost. I'm showing you the sped up version of these videos because this took several days to do, several hours. There's a lot of dry time, and I think it's more fun to see the pigments spread out in live time. Like I'm adding in some greens, some burnt sienna. Yeah, 2 different greens on my palette. I'm blending it with the yellows as well. It's fun to watch what kind of new colors emerge when you layer them in with watercolor. And that's why I enjoy using this medium so much. In this painting, I'm using a giant mop with a point. This allows me to collect enough water and pigment on the brush to last quite a while working on the painting. Otherwise, if you use tiny brushes, you have to keep running back and forth and getting new colors, and everything might dry in the meantime, and oh man, what a disaster. So, large brushes for large pieces of paper. I'm putting in a second layer of greens so that the colors really pop and I can define those jungle details and forest details. And now I'm adding in some white gouache for the sand, and I'm going to let that fully dry before I go over everything with a ruler. And here it is fully dry without the lines. And now I'm using my handy dandy ruler to lay in some grid for the map. And then what I do is I take one of those little crystal bead pieces you can get from your local craft store. People put them in like decorative jars. I use that to mark where the party is, but of course if you have figurines, definitely use those. I also like to draw in a couple of details to the map. Sometimes I add pyramids, obelisks, some traps. Here's a crashed boat. That's kind of fun. Fun things to run into in the jungle. I've noticed that players like to look around at all the little details while they're waiting for their turn. So it's kind of fun to place these little landmarks in the map. And sometimes players will be like, what is that temple over there? Please, we have to go investigate that. And that's always kind of fun to watch them. Just the curiosity overwhelms them. So I definitely recommend drawing in some details like this cave. My last tip is to make sure everything is dry before you start using the pen. Otherwise it might bleed into the color and won't give you those nice clean lines. Thanks for watching, and I love questions, so I'll try and answer as many as I can in the comments.